Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Guitar Night Live. This is episode 11. And for tonight's episode, we have a guitar player who I've been really wanting to talk to for ages now. He is came up through the classical world, classical guitar, and now is in something really interesting and different with prepared guitar and new music, contemporary music. And he's played with loads and loads of people, composed a lot of music. I'm really looking forward to him. He's a very enthusiastic and interesting person to talk to. His name's Benjamin Dwyer. Benjamin, welcome to Guitar Night Live.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Let me kick off by, I wanted to ask you first of all, if you meet somebody, just a random stranger, like at an airport or something, and they ask you, "Oh, what do you do? What's your job?" What do you say to them?
Well, I usually pause to think about it. Um, the, I tell them I'm a musician
Yeah.
because being a musician now entails so many different things. So it depends on what hat I'm wearing at a given time. So tonight I'm a performer, but also I'm a composer. Maybe in some of the subjects that we discuss, I might put on my musicological hat. There might even be a little philosophical hat there, I don't know. But being a musician really means a lot of things now. We teach, we play, we compose, we think about music. It's not one thing.
And it's interesting, it's hard to sum it up. Like, what if the person says, "Oh, you're a musician?" "Yes, so am I. What do you play?" Then
Well,
what do you
that's when it gets difficult.
say?
A more common question is, "Oh, and what sort of music do you play?"
Yes, that's hard
My,
to answer now.
yeah, my answer is usually the sort of music that very few people want to listen to. And that's the truth, because I'm working on the periphery of music, if you like. My audience is small, and I've come to be very comfortable there. Not that I'm hiding away, but there was a time when I was disappointed about, if you like, that small world that some of us live in. But you know, I'm making the sort of music that is not for everybody. You know, and so I've come to appreciate, if you like, the small community that I do have.
Yeah. So is the term classical guitarist something that you left a while back, or would you still call yourself a classical guitarist?
Yeah, well, you see, this whole conversation has started off as a discussion about categories,
Yeah.
and I think maybe I've spent the last 25 years breaking down that sort of category. I mean, I'm not a guitarist. I'm a guitarist. I'm a composer. I'm also a musicologist. I write about music. So that's a broken down category already. Classical music. Yes, I'm classically trained, but for the last 25 years, I've really been mostly interested in contemporary classical music. So
Yeah.
that's not the idea that most people consider classical music to be. And in the last 5 or 6 years, I've sort of broken new area or new ground for me into improvisation. Now,
Yeah.
that's not jazz. I'm not a jazz guitarist. But I am very interested in the spontaneous unfolding of music. The thing about, well, we can talk about free jazz later, perhaps, if you want. I can get into that later.
It's interesting. I have the same kind of thing with the same difficulty of putting what I do into categories, but it's like it seems like today it's becoming music is becoming like hyper genreized. That's not a word, but like I have younger students who would like be making music that really fits in a really specific subcategory of music, and it seems to be driven by the way people search for things now. You know, you have
That's
to be
true.
very specific to search for, you know, something.
Yeah, I mean, even within classical music, you have people who specialize in Bach, or you have people who specialize in Mozart, or maybe they're Schubert experts.
Yeah,
Uh, but I also feel at the same time we're living in a kind of a postmodern era. I mean, we're in a postmodern era for many many years now, but I think it has exploded. Um, a lot of these compartmentalizations, if I can use that, and there are I work with a lot of musicians who naturally work and in many different fields, and they are quite expert in those different fields, and I think is a new development, you know.
yeah,
uh, and I think composers, for example, are um, let's just say somebody like Benjamin Britten, who died in 76, born in 1913. He, in the 50s, went to Asia. You know, he went to Thailand and places like that. And he came home and he started writing music which was influenced by gamelan music.
yeah,
We don't have to do that anymore. The world is coming to us.
yeah.
I mean, this very webinar is an example, you know. Um,
Sure.
so composers are exposed to world influences now in a way that they weren't even 50 years ago. So the entire notion of a composer's language, or if you like, a compositional signature, has been completely, that has exploded completely. So I think it's a very exciting time, but I think it may be a very confusing time for music lovers as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a blessing and a curse. You've got every single thing in the world and you can listen to it all and it's great. And then with like faced with all those millions of influences, how do you find your own thing?
Yeah, it's almost you're spoiled for choice,
Yeah.
and then I think it affects listening habits as well, because when I was a young musician, I would go through phases of listening only to Shostakovich, or only to Stravinsky, or only to Jimi Hendrix. And now I think we're almost bombarded too much
Yeah.
by many different types of music, and it's hard actually to familiarize yourself with specific genres, or more likely subgenres. So it's almost like overkill.
Mm.
So I think that has to be handled well. It has to be managed in some way.
And in terms of listening to music now, do you make specific time to listen properly to music? I mean, I don't really. I should do that, but like listening when you're out and about or on the go is really not the same as sitting down and
I
listening
have to
properly.
say, I never listen
Yeah,
to music in the street or with
yeah,
headphones walking. I often wonder, I've made my entire life out of music, and I don't seem to need it as much as some people do, because they can't go anywhere without their headphones.
yeah,
When I'm in the street, I want to hear people talking. I don't particularly want to hear traffic noise. I give that, but I don't want to isolate myself while I'm in the street walking into the city centre. I want to see people meeting each other. I want to hear what they're saying, listen to Dublin anecdotes. I don't really understand this isolation while in public.
sure.
We spend lots of time in isolation,
So do
and
you,
then we go out and we're still in isolation. I don't really understand that. So for me, listening to music is a really I never listen passively to music. I mean, obviously this is a big problem for me when I go to restaurants or bars and you hear the doom doom doom. This, for me, that's pollution. It's no, listen, I can go out and have a beer and get up and dance and have a good time, don't get me wrong, but we are so polluted with noise and muzak and drum beats that I think it's potentially damaging to consciousness. I really.
yeah.
So most of my listening is really in my room here in my studio, and I listen for a given amount of time, and I listen only to that. I've
That's
been
great.
lately to Morton Feldman.
Yeah.
which is very long, and but I get into this zone with Morton Feldman. You can't get into a zone with Morton Feldman in O'Connell Street. It's just
No, that's funny. There was a more Feldman piece on piano and string quartet was played at one of the Living Music festivals a few years ago.
yes,
And I went to hear it, and people had been kind of warning me about this piece is very long. It's like an hour and a half, and nothing much happens in it. And I was like sitting on one of those like hard. It was in the chapel in what's that place on Denmark Street in the school. There's like chapel there, and hard seat. And I was listening to it, and after I think it took 20 minutes or something, and the rest of the whole time just I was completely in some kind of meditative state listening to it. And then when it ended, I looked around, half the people had left. I was like,
yeah,
what?
yeah.
They weren't experiencing that. It really changed the way I heard music for a few weeks after that. It was very
Yeah,
powerful.
because you're listening to time and you're listening to yourself in time. I
Yeah,
also think maybe the way these concerts are presented, particularly ones like that, that we perhaps should be allowed to lie down and just zone in and zone out, because
yeah, big time.
I don't think, I mean, I don't want to do Feldman a disservice. There's a huge amount of detail in what he does. But I think we're meant to float on that. It's a bit like a Rothko painting. You're just meant to lose yourself in that vibe.
Sure.
It's a different type of music, for sure.
Is there one piece where it's like 12 hours or more, and then there are actually places to lie down?
Well, I think, I can't remember. I think it's one of is it the second string quartet or the third? I can't remember, but it goes on for 4 hours. And
Yeah,
I mean, come on. I mean, that's a different type of listening, I think.
yeah.
It's inviting you into a different type of world there. And I think maybe to lose the body is probably a good thing. So lying down and being comfortable and just zoning out is probably the way to go.
Yeah. Christopher, you mentioned Hendrix, and I wanted to ask you about it. Bring me back to when you first heard Hendrix, and were you playing guitar yet? Did it influence you?
I was the youngest of 4 brothers, and so largely what they were playing had a huge impact on me.
Yeah,
And one was a Dylan fan, the other was a Hendrix fan, and the other one was a Pink Floyd fan. And so from a very early period, I was listening to this type of music. I think Hendrix is quite special, and the more I know about music, which after many years is still not very much, but the longer I go on, I haven't left him behind. I mean, I was 13, 14. He was a great hero, but actually he's still a great hero in the sense that, he was an amazing experimenter. Now, I'm not talking about, Foxy Lady or I mean, they're good rock songs, and Bold as Love is a good single, and Hey Joe is a good single. But what he was doing, most particularly when he was live, and quite often when he was playing blues, that he kind of transcended blues and the instrument. He was esoteric, actually. I mean, he was innovative in sound creation in the same way and at the same time that Stockhausen was.
yeah,
I don't see him in any lesser category. He was absolutely transcendental in terms of being a composer who happened to be a guitarist, and he composed through his instrument. And at his best and most esoteric, he was making music that was and is as important in terms of the development and our understanding of music as Stockhausen.
yeah.
A bit like Frank Zappa. Occasionally you get figures in a genre like rock, which, let's be clear about it, is not the most complicated genre, but sometimes you get figures who transform the rock music into something incredibly mind-altering.
And Hendrix was like kind of using the studio as well as his instrument. He was like doing, like when you listen to his albums and then you listen to other albums from the same years,
Mm,
it sounds like it's way in the future from compared to what other people were doing,
yeah,
like
and
70, 71.
yeah, and near the period of his death, he was going into a different sort of area as well. It's hard to know what
Mm.
might have been on the other side. It's hard to know what might
Recording
have
with
been.
Miles.
Yeah, if he had started working with Miles Davis, who knows? I mean, it's just, I mean, that will remain one of the great unsolved mysteries, I guess, you know.
Yeah. And in terms of your playing, what age were you when you started playing guitar?
I was late. I started playing Dylan songs on a steel string when I was about 13,
Yeah.
14. For classical music, that's quite late.
Did you
And then I
learn
went into the electric
Hendrix?
guitar. I mean, I couldn't afford a Fender. I had a copy of a Fender
Yeah.
and a Marshall amp, and I was, I wasn't bad. I could play a lot of Hendrix stuff. I could play a lot of Carlos Santana solos, Moonflower and Samba Pati, and you know, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, in fairness to Santana, there was a lot of beauty in the playing. It was quite subtle. It was melodic. He had a signature in his playing.
Mm.
It's a bit unfortunate that he hasn't developed, in my view, as much as perhaps he might have.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
revered, he's revered, but not by me,
Yeah.
not anymore.
So in your early influences, we were talking about this the other day, but with Hendrix and Santana, they both used to be like big
Well, Santana was big
production.
for me, yeah.
Yeah.
And I saw him live
Yeah.
in London.
Right.
But I don't want to take anything away from Santana. He was an amazing advocate for Hispanic people in on the West Coast, and he was a kind of a hero for them. He still is, and he was a unique guitarist. He's a unique guitarist, but he's gone very commercial in my view,
Right.
and he's making great commercial stuff. He's making great, he has great collaborations with other artists. I mean, you got to give him his due. He's at it 50 years, and he's still coming up with number ones. Fine. But it's not Miles. And, as I said to you earlier, for me, artists need to continue changing their skin. It could be this whole element that they get a sound, people adore that sound, and they stick with that because, of course, it makes them millions and millions. But
Yeah.
I'm not too sure if that's a good recipe for developing as a musician.
Sure.
I mean, music should be challenging, even though we become expert and virtuoso and so forth. It's really a kind of a philosophy for me. Music is a way of understanding the world. But if you stop reading the one book, if you stop reading at one book or the second book and you don't continue reading, you're not testing yourself. And I think there's this whole element of moving your cheese, as a friend of mine would say, Brian Kavanagh. You got to move your cheese.
Yeah.
You got to get out of your comfort zone, and it's not easy. It can be heartbreaking, and you can lose, I suppose, audience and so forth. But for me, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. It reminded me of when I was studying with Donegal Dennehy. He told me his teacher always used to say to him, "You have to write the music that you don't like yet." And that's kind of hard to get your head around. It's like, even I don't like it yet. That's crazy.
That's interesting because, I spent the first 20 years writing virtuoso guitar music, and I've just completed a project inspired by Beckett, and it has forced me into an area which is, I won't say it's not virtuosic in the sense that it's very hard to play, but it's not wearing virtuosity on its sleeve at all. And if you had asked me 10 years ago that I was going to write these pieces, this type of music, I would have said, I don't think so. But there you go. But you should remain open and constantly put yourself under surveillance.
So was the pieces you were referring to the etudes?
My early pieces were the etudes, yeah. I mean, I wrote those over a period of 10 years, basically because it took me 10 years to learn how to play them. I mean, they're very difficult.
Right.
And I eventually recorded them. It would be nice if other people started playing them, and hopefully one or two will. But it'll take a while because they are quite difficult. So it would take particular vocation to take them up, you know.
Yeah. Is Etude number 1 Relentless?
Yeah. Would you like me to play that?
Please, I'd love to hear it.
I mean, this is the first of the etudes, and I guess there's a touch of rock and roll here.
Great.
Particularly on the way that the same motifs just kind of repeat and build up and build up and build up. Okay.
And just before you start, I'll say to everybody, if you have a question for Benjamin, you can write it in chat, or you can put your hand up later on. We'll unmute you so you can ask questions. So, you know, if they come up, there's also Q&A boxes 3 different ways, but you know, just sit back and listen, and if questions come up later on, you can write them down and I'll ask, or put your hand up and we'll unmute you. So go ahead, Benjamin.
Okay.
Applause.
That sounds like a lot of people.
Amazing.
This is a weird experience.
Wow, you did great to just get into that so much when there's just nobody there in front of you. It's a really strange experience playing.
Sure is.
But that was incredible. That was amazing. Can you, what did you write the etudes chronologically? Is that the first one that you wrote?
That's the first one. No, in the end, no, because you know, they were written in a group of 12, and I don't know if your audience is aware of this, but lots of etudes, which are studies for the instrument, and I'm talking particularly the concert etude, which was brought to us really by Chopin. they are created in groups of 12.
Right.
So Chopin wrote 2 groups of 12 etudes, as did Debussy, and of course the famous 12 etudes for guitar by Villa-Lobos.
Those ones,
So
yeah.
I was actually writing into the canon.
Yeah.
I knew when I'd written the first one, I was going to write another 11, which was a nightmare, because I knew I wanted to do that. I didn't realize it would take 10 years. But once you're writing 12 etudes, you then have to consider what would 12 etudes work, how would that work if you're listening to 12 etudes? And of course, that brings the piece up to 45 minutes. So then it's a 45-minute piece, and so form, content, the shaping of that 45 minutes has to be taken into consideration. You know,
if you play all 12 in a concert, how much space do you leave between them?
not a huge amount. I mean, you have to get on, because
Yeah.
in fact, I also divided those 12 into 4 books of 3. So the 12 comprise 4 books, and as it happens, you know, I wanted a sense of momentum running through right to the end, so you arrive at this moment. And if it's difficult to do that when the first is so energetic, you know, it's like it can't be downhill from there on in. So you have to pace. You have to pace the piece. So the first book has fast, slow, fast. The second book, fast, slow, fast. The third book, fast, slow, fast. And the fourth book, fast, fast, fast.
Right.
So you get this undulating thing, and then it just explodes. So there were 2 types of composition there. One was the composition of the individual pieces. Oh, 3 types. The second type was the composition of each book, you know, because if you were going to play just one book, it would have to be a satisfying 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And then there was the composing of the whole set, which, because you have to bring your audience with you on a 45-minute journey for solo guitar. It's quite tricky.
And
you know,
technically, there was lots of things going on in there. Was there things that you were doing in that first etude that were just new to that piece, or was it things you'd already done before?
Well, I think, you know, this first piece, the whole set, incidentally, as well, is built on the same motif. There are 2 motifs. You probably gathered.
Yeah.
And then the perfect fifth. So the fifth is like the harmonic base of it, and the chromatic line is the bit that slides, you know. So you get in the opening. There's your fifth, you know, and then there's the chromatic line. All of the etudes have the same motif, which is another thing that binds them. You know, it's a kind of a DNA running through. But as the first piece, it's the piece that falls under the hands. So I don't have to change the position. You know? A little bit there. And there's a lot of guitar-y things. You know? I didn't follow that completely in other etudes, because, I mean, obviously when you're starting to compose, your hands are teaching you what they want to play. And this brings in an interesting subject about the competition when you are a composer, a performer, that the hands often tell the composer what to do, but then the composer is often rejecting what the hands want to play. Because if you're not careful, you can fall into cliche. You know, in many ways, that's a very cliched piece, because it's all under the fingers. So that's fine, but it gave me my motifs. But then I moved on to much more complicated. So there are about 3 or 4 pieces that fit very well under the hand, even though they're quite difficult. But most of them are actually expanding the possibilities of the instrument and of the performer.
But there's a question in from Anselm. Do each of the etudes have a particular technical focus?
That's a very, very, very good question. Because we know that, for example, if we listen to the Chopin etudes, Some of them are on repeated notes, da, 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 dum, or octaves, da, 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 dum, or scales, and they're quite pedagogic in that sense. The same with Debussy. The first one is for the five fingers, da 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 da. It's a bit of a skit on Czerny, on the old piano masters who wrote studies. The second one is on, I think, thirds. The third one is on fourths. The fourth one is on sixths. And then there's one on arpeggios and octaves. Although I have to say Debussy absolutely transcends the pedagogic nature of them. The Villa-Lobos, not playing it very well, but you get the first one is on arpeggios.
Yeah, that one is one that Mike Nielsen was my main teacher, and I know you know him well. You played with him a lot. But when I was a teenager, I was going to Mike Nielsen. I was learning rock and jazz, and Mike was always getting me to play other different things. And he taught me that piece, which was, I couldn't read or anything. He just taught me the chords and the pattern, and I love it. I still play it. I teach it to students.
It's a very useful one. But just
amazing,
to answer that question, it doesn't really. I mean, but you probably notice I have octaves. So so the piece doesn't go like, it doesn't do that like a classical piece, but there are octaves. And so it has what I call embedded pedagogy. It's not about octaves, but octaves are in there.
Yeah.
I mean, really, the piece is about multiple rhythms.
Yeah.
It's a study in rhythm. The rhythms are changing all the time. So there are lots of studies within each study. Is the answer to that question?
If anyone else has a question, just fire it in the chat there, or you can put your hand up. So, what was the next piece? Was Song for Her?
Yeah, well, it's just in stark contrast, in case, in case people think I can't write a melody. So this is a piece called Song for Her, and or in Spanish, Canción para ella.
Are you able to have it angle the camera a little bit? Your right hand is going underneath. Yeah, great. Perfect. That was beautiful. I'm not going to put any fake applause on that one. Let's just let the silence hang there. The sound is Zoom is not kind to the guitar. It cuts off the end of notes, and we if we were there in the room, we'd be able to take it in so much better. But it still sounds amazing.
One of the drawbacks of this dislocated form of communication.
Yeah, but I'm sure everybody feels the same as me, that it's better than not hearing. You can't all be in your room listening right now. So to be able to be here and listen to you play it, it's a gift. We're really lucky. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The guitar you're telling me about your guitar, and it's very interesting where it was made and who made it. Do you want to tell us?
Yeah. All my guitars are made by the same man. He's now 90, so I don't think he's making any more. I think I probably got the last of his instruments. His name is Joaquin Garcia, and he's from Malaga in Andalusia, where I actually lived in a studio for 6 months. And I had the very unusual and wonderful experience of being in his studio while he was making this instrument for me.
Amazing.
So at the time, I had just moved to Spain. I couldn't speak English, and I couldn't speak Spanish.
Yeah.
And he couldn't speak English. And so the only way to communicate with him was to play the guitar all day while he was working away on my guitar. And so he got to understand my sound,
Yeah.
because everybody has a different sound. He got to understand my temperament as a musician. And this is the result, this beautiful, very unusual instrument, which we call the Picasso Big Guitar because it's a bit like a piece of cubist workmanship. It's quite all handmade completely. And I have other instruments from him. I have in total about 5 instruments from Joaquin, and they are all spruce top, which offers a very clear sound. This is quite unusual, this guitar, because most classical guitars have rosewood. It's a dark wood on the side, which gives this kind of a body of sound. But this is cypress, which is a lot of flamenco guitarists. This is rosewood here, so the whole guitar at the back should be this color. But he decided to, because of the extra resonance created by the oval shape at the bottom, for the clarity he brought in the cypress, and so you get this incredible clarity in the. I don't know, you're probably not hearing this very well, but it's he was a great experimenter with instruments, and this is one of his, and I'll never sell it.
Yeah. What year did he make that guitar?
2001. So this guitar is 19 years old already.
And I'm sure the sound is improving.
Well, I went to do a concert in Montreal about 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago. And I arrived on the day before Patrick's Day. So I know it was March. And it was so cold. It was something like 20 degrees below zero. And it was incredibly dry, that sort of really dry cold.
Yeah.
And I opened up the case, and a crack the whole front had cracked in two.
Wow.
You had to give the concert like that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and the whole guitar was rattling.
Wow.
Yeah. But I brought it back to Joaquin, and he found a new table.
Wow.
Table, which is the most important part of the instrument. So, and it's a very strong instrument now.
That must have been quite traumatic seeing that.
Well, the old saying, the show must go on. I mean, I could post a letter into the guitar. It was not a pleasant experience,
Wow.
And then I had to go out and play some etudes. But it was a good experience. It was in Canada, in Montreal, in in a hall called the Oscar Peterson Hall, which held about 1,500 people. And I remember when I was a kid, I used to watch Oscar Peterson every Sunday. He had his own show that was beamed into RTE. You wouldn't get it today. And so at the age of 9 or 10, I knew who Oscar Peterson was. I was enjoying his concerts and his playing, and I loved it. And it was a great pleasure for me to eventually perform in the Oscar Peterson Hall. It was like some sort of full circle in my life. You know, it was a beautiful thing.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
With the last two pieces you were going to play, do you have a preferred order, or would you finish with the Etude number 6 and talk about prepared guitar first?
No, I'll play this Etude first, because
Okay.
I think the last piece would be so wacky
Okay.
and crazy. But I like to finish sometimes with things that are so open that they ask questions of both me and the listener.
Great.
I should say that the last Etude of my 12 Etudes is called Improvimemoriam Burial. It's a neologism of improvisation and in memoriam Berio, because I was halfway through composing it and Berio had passed away, Luciano Berio. So it became something completely different, but it's not, I mean, all the notes are written, but it feels completely open tonally in terms of its playing. Its structure is very open. So the opening of the Etudes, it's very tight. It all happens within one hand.
Yeah.
But the last of the Etudes is an explosion. And I was thinking about that for a long time, and I said in the end, yes, because I wanted that to be a question mark. Where does the guitar go? Where is the guitar going to go? And that's what the last Etude really asks in that. Okay, so earlier on we were talking about pieces that fit under the hand, and maybe I was writing pieces that would go against the instrument. Well, to state the obvious, playing the guitar is a mixture of holding down certain notes with the left hand and plucking notes with the right hand. It's a combination of both. This Etude goes against that very basic concept.
Right. And
so the left hand has its own business and the right hand has its own business. So they play separately for 95% of the piece. And the piece is in two halves. It's called African Print. And the reason I gave it that title is that harmonically the piece doesn't move. It just has repeated chords, doesn't move. Although everything else moves. So there's a sound world around it, a timbral sound world, but it's not a harmonic world. It's a world of different sounds. Okay. And so the main thing about this is that the left hand and the right hand, they don't know what the other hand is doing. Okay. Shall I proceed with this?
Go ahead.
Okay. So I just say with this and with the next piece, because the left hand plays by itself, it may be rather quiet. So people will have to listen in. So,
Wow. Amazing.
so there's a bit of confusion there, as you probably gather.
Well, it's very interesting. The extended techniques, I kind of wanted to ask about, have you checked out, or in terms of electric guitar extended technique with things like the tapping and the harmonics,
Mm.
have you been influenced by any electric guitar extended technique, or are you kind of coming from a different
Well,
angle?
no, well, clearly that's an electric. That one, yes.
Yeah,
But the harmonics are part of the guitar, of the classical scene anyway, you
yeah,
know. So not really, but of course then I mean, we normally have, you know, our natural harmonics, and then we have, you know, we can make our artificial harmonics. But I've become quite interested lately in unlocking, and maybe this is what the next piece is really about, and some of my Beckett pieces, which I probably won't play tonight, but unlocking, if you like, latent sounds
yeah.
in the guitar. So so the harmonics that are off the standard, you know.
Oh yeah,
So we go, I mean, getting harmonics down here, which normally people would avoid like the plague,
yeah.
that sort of thing, or this sort of sound.
Mm.
Or you know, playing here. So it's actually plucking here. I'm in the process now of getting my guitar amplified, and
Yes.
perhaps amplifying this side of the instrument, because of course once you block the strings, this part of the instrument is not being amplified by the box.
Sure.
That's being amplified, but that's not.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested in unlocking different sounds of the instrument. I mean, I've been working with a bow lately, you know, and just seeing. Anyway, the thing is, that is the guitar. it's not the guitar. It's just a part of the guitar that's not exploited or played.
Mm.
And it's a little bit on the theory side, but my study of Beckett has made me understand that Beckett often uses elements of language that most writers would throw away.
Yeah.
So I've become very interested in what most composers would not dare use as musical materials, you know, which and what are the elements of guitar that are not played ever, that are not written about or composed by composers ever. I mean, it's taken me a while to get to this place, but I've written two guitar concertos. I've written a guitar quintet. I've written a guitar quartet. I've written 12 etudes. I've written a sonata. I've written so much music for the instrument that I feel I can actually make these explorations. You know, I've come to the end of a particular journey, and I've kind of earned this new study, if you like. You know, it's not like I'm starting off just experimenting. I'm coming to this area of the instrument from 30 years experience of doing what an instrument normally does.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe this piece, this etude, was the beginning of that. All these sounds are actually in the instrument already, and it just but they still have to be composed and thought through carefully. Just because they exist isn't good enough. It's not a good enough reason, you know.
Well, there's a comment in from the from my student Sinead after the last piece. She said, "Wow, speechless! Enjoyed that so much."
Oh, thank you, Sinead.
And there's a question in about the nails. The nails are so interesting for, you know, people who don't play fingerstyle or anything, and you know, it's so interesting. Tell us, you know.
Well, it's a big problem, and these are not the nails I normally use. These are from a beauty pack that I have to put on. I normally get them put on for me using acrylic.
Yeah.
Also in a beauty department. I have the same girl doing my nails for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
Would you believe? But these have made me feel a little bit uncomfortable playing, actually, because
is the sound very different?
Yeah, it's different, but it's a good sound. It's my sound.
Yeah.
I just never had strong nails.
Yeah.
So the problem is I've had to deal with this issue.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not uncommon for very famous classical guitarists to wear false nails now. I know Fabio Zanon, for example, is a very famous guitarist. He cuts up ping pong balls into moon shapes and places them underneath his nails.
Yeah.
So they do offer a very interesting sound, and you know, they allow me to actually be a little bit more forceful at times. I've been a bit nervous with these ones because these are only stuck on, as opposed to actually, you know, these are stuck on with glue.
Sure.
But the acrylic actually are put on as a liquid and harden.
Wow.
So they feel like your nails. These feel like false nails. So I've been a little bit cautious, you know.
Yeah.
But it's a problem, you know. I have my nail problems.
That is powerful glue, though, isn't it? It's like when you
they look terrible. I mean, you know, they're not there for aesthetic purposes, but I wish they could look better. But there you go. You can't.
I tried them once. I started playing fingerstyle because Mike got me into fingerstyle. But I was playing electric guitar, and if I played a gig, every nail would get ripped off. Like there was no way I could play steel strings fingerstyle, and with the intensity of playing a gig, none of the nails would last at all. No,
it's a big worry, and I have had to stop halfway through pieces.
Yeah.
With broken nails, and it's not something that you want to do.
No.
It's a bit of a nightmare, but we can't play classical without the nails. I mean, the classical guitar used to be played without the nails when it was a very small instrument, and when concerts were like little soirees, you know, for groups of 10 or 15. But in the modern arena, you know, even for concerts of 150 or something, you need. Yeah. You know, you need to be able to project the instrument, and the nails are the only way to do that, you know.
So we're coming up to the hour. We'll go a little bit over so we can hear the last prepared guitar piece. But
Yeah.
just before you play that, do you want to let people know about where they can get and hear your music? And if you teach privately, I don't know, do you teach?
I don't teach. I don't teach. I have one excellent guitar student
Oh, great, great.
In Middlesex University.
Yeah,
That's where I'm based.
sure.
So I don't normally teach, but of course, you know, if somebody wants to come up and visit me here in Dublin, I can work something out, you know.
Or how would people contact you if they wanted to get in touch?
Well, my website is there. It just Google my name and it comes up immediately. Benjamin Dwyer.
I'll put it in here, benjamindwyer.com, is it?
Yeah, and my music can be got from the Contemporary Music Centre.
Yeah.
And they have all the CDs as well.
Yeah.
So it's not a problem.
Great.
Yeah.
So the prepared guitar piece.
Yeah, I'm going to keep this one short because I just had a look at this today and I realized that this is the first time I'm playing prepared guitar where it's not amplified.
Right.
So much of the material, much of the sounds that I'm trying to capture probably won't be heard so well.
When it's amplified, is it like close mic'd, or how do you do that?
No, quite often I just use a DPA. You know, it's hanging in the air, but it picks up. It will pick up the left of the hand. I was telling you about the unamplified part as well. So this is a bit unusual for me. It's like an unplugged thing. But just to explain, I mean, even if it just serves as an introduction, this is another instrument I've prepared. This is one I prepared earlier. And what I've done is, and this is what I'm interested in doing at the moment, is I've put a tuning fork in there. And I've put some wood in here. And so I'm dividing the fretboard into 3 separate areas. And what that does is it deconstructs the instrument completely.
Yeah.
It also deconstructs the tonality of the instrument. So quite often we're getting unamplified sounds. And I'm wondering maybe if I just come closer to the to my computer, you might have a better chance of hearing better sounds.
Yeah.
Is that a better?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so I'll just do a little short one by way of introduction, actually, rather than anything else. Okay.
Intro and outro.
This is completely improvised, so that's another thing to keep in mind. Okay.
Great.
And so it's just called Improvisation on prepared guitar. I hope it doesn't freak anybody out. Okay.
Wow. Amazing.
Okay.
That was brilliant.
Yeah, it's a little bit odd, and it's a work in progress to see what's inside that instrument dying to get out. You know?
Well, I had loads of ideas there that I have to tell you about some,
Yeah.
yeah, another time. But brilliant, wonderfully weird and exciting, Sinead said. It's so interesting. Yeah, the sound world is great.
Yeah.
What key was that in? I expect someone will ask that. If anybody has a question, put your hand up or ask it before we finish up. But really, wow, I have to just say thank you so much for coming on tonight. And I wanted to have in this series different guitars from different genres, and we covered so much there tonight. This is, I think we've like covered everything now.
We're breaking down the genre.
As to the end.
As Nick Roth says, there's no such thing as genre. Huh?
Yeah.
You might be right.
Well,
anyway, it's been unusual for me because I thought I might be seeing everybody in multiple little squares. And so I just want to say thank you for everyone who's taken time out to tune in. It's been an unusual experience. I'm looking at you, Daniel, only, and a little photograph of myself. And but I know that there are other people out there. It's a very, very strange experience for me, but very enjoyable.
Setup, you don't see all the videos, but Anselmas, do you have a particular approach for finding new sounds?
I think well, I've just in fact played some of them. I mean, I would say that my work in free improvisation in the last 5 years has been really, really crucial in exploring new sound worlds, because it's a bit like going to an island that has not been inhabited before and finding new types of flowers or something like that, and you can take them back. So sometimes when I'm free improvising, especially with the different groups that I play with, like with sometimes with Nick Roth or with the Blue Shroud band with Barry Guy and that crew, you end up performing things that you hadn't expected to perform, for example. And quite often you do things that you didn't even know that you could do technically. This is a very strange thing about free improvisation. When it goes well, when things are going well and there's a great interaction, strange things happen. Beautiful things happen, and things happen that you don't expect to happen. And then you remember them later and say, oh, I can bring that and I can put that into a composition, probably, possibly. It's not, by the way, just about sounds. It's about organizing sounds in a particular way. And so while I was displaying there some elements of the sounds, I think as a composer, it's important to remember that it's not just the sounds, that some sounds follow on from other sounds, that you still have to try and make music from the sounds. So the unusual nature of the sounds is not enough. It still needs to be made into a kind of a music that makes sense and that has cohesion. And I think that's important to know. I mean, we started off on talking about rock guitarists and how they can be quite virtuosic and, just on the display. And that can get very boring after a while. It's what there are lots of electric guitarists that I would say technically are better than Jimi Hendrix,
Yeah.
But after 10 minutes, technique is only a vehicle towards something else. It can't be the something else.
We didn't even get into Duende.
We didn't even get into Duende. But in a way, this is what Duende is. I mean, but we need another hour to talk about Duende.
Definitely.
Duende is basically the blues.
Definitely.
Basically soul,
A couple of more questions came in. If you don't mind.
I'm free. I'm not going anywhere tonight. I'm locked in.
Peter asked, this style must be hard wearing on the guitar. Do you go through lots of strings?
I've told you how much I love these instruments, but I don't pamper my instruments.
Yeah.
The instruments take a hell of a lot of abuse.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, especially when I'm working with the Blue Shroud Band and I'm working with 14 other musicians, I have to keep my presence in that. And sometimes I don't care. The instruments are they're so well constructed, they can take quite a lot of abuse. And I do go through strings, of course, yes. But I know that a lot of classical guitarists, I'm sorry to say this, but they are super delicate and sort of, if you touch their instruments, they're a bit too paranoid in my view. I guess an instrument should show the scars of its performance life, and this one does actually. You can probably see that there's plenty of damage done, but I don't mind, and I don't think Joaquin Garcia would mind either. This is an instrument that is showing its scars.
Yeah.
That's it.
And Lisa, my wife, she was watching the Known Unknown video and asked, how does improvising with a dancer differ from improvising with other musicians?
Oh, look, I mean, improvising, you can do it by yourself, okay, but actually it really should be done in company. I mean, for me, improvisation is about communication. So when you're playing with other musicians, the communication is sonic communication. And I know when I'm working with some musicians, because there are, if you like, it's like when you meet a person that you connect with for the first time, and you might not connect with that person's sister, there's a DNA, and I know with some musicians, the minute we look at each other and we play, something beautiful happens. But I think with dancers, it's another league altogether, because you're responding sonically, but they're responding in terms of movement and using their body as the instrument. And so we're dealing here with a kind of translation from body movement into sound. And that becomes a fascinating exploration. And again, you're drawn out of your little guitar world.
Yeah.
You have to look at what's happening. You have to look at the response. You can't hear it. You might be able to hear some pattering of feet or a breath, but you need to look at the body and the form and how an arm is moving. Because the way that arm moves, it might give you that form to respond to, And so that is using the visual as a stimulus for the sonic, if that makes sense, and vice versa, incidentally.
That's fascinating and totally makes sense. When the last concert that I went to before the lockdown, And Sinead, who's listening, actually went to it as well. It was Paco Pena played in Dunleary.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, with a dancer, and that was really, really kind of, it was absolutely incredible, but it was visibly kind of a just light bulb moment for how connected the dancing and the music are and how they
Yeah.
are evolved together. And the dancing is part of the music completely. Literally is the sounds are part of the music as well
Oh,
as the movements.
oh, it is. I mean, all those dance forms are the same dance forms that they play. You know,
Yeah,
uh, the bulerías and the soleas and all those, but they all have specific rhythms.
yeah,
But within that, there's a tremendous amount. What you have there is energy when you see the dancer. I mean, I lived in Malaga for quite a while, and I used to go to this very what they call in Spanish cutre, a real dive, a really dirty old place.
yeah.
But every Thursday they had flamenco, and I think I learned a lot about music there, just listening,
Mm.
and I learned a lot about the how to deliver music with passion. That you cannot be a good flamenco player or dancer if you're only 40% involved. In fact, you cannot be a good flamenco dancer or player if you're only 95% involved.
Yeah,
You need to be 147% involved or higher.
yeah,
And so that notion of 100% commitment to a gesture of a dance or just your arm, just doing that is 150%. It's not just doing that, it's 150% of doing that is a lesson in life. And when you're playing free improvisation, you have to jump off the cliff
yeah,
without a parachute. And the only thing you have to have the cojones, as they say in Spanish, to jump off the cliff.
yeah,
Because if you don't jump off the cliff, you're not going to find the little goblin that's going to help you survive when you jump off the cliff. You know what I mean? And
absolutely.
at flamenco, just hearing, Estrella Morente, for example, live in Barcelona one year, it just tore me apart.
It totally comes through when you're playing, actually. I didn't connect it at the time, but it doesn't sound like flamenco, but the energy is of a similar.
No, I'm not a flamenco guitarist. I would never claim to be. And when you hear the brilliant flamenco guitarists, and although we have a brilliant one here with
Well, actually, I was going to say, because Guitar Night Live episode 1 was John Walsh.
oh yeah, he's fantastic. Yeah, but he's been down there for many years, and I suspect he'll go back.
Yeah,
I mean, my own feeling was that I would have to go. I would have to spend the rest of my life,
yeah,
getting into brawls in Granada, and I'd have to, no, I mean, I jest, but you would have to give your life to that. I mean, that's the thing about flamenco. It's 150% commitment. 95 is not enough.
amazing.
And in many ways, that's the message for all the musicians out there who are interested in taking music on as a career. It's a kind of a vocation, and 95% isn't really good enough. It's just not good enough. There are hundreds of players, thousands of players, especially guitarists, who are pretty good 95 percenters, but that won't hack it.
Yeah.
So that's what flamenco teaches us, I think, the best of it. I mean,
We've got like a good few springboards to take us on another hour or two on another occasion. We'll definitely have to continue it.
sure, I'd be delighted to come back.
So,
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
absolutely a pleasure and really fascinating and great, and just really enjoyed every minute.
Okay.
So
Well, thank
we'll,
you, and good night to all who came in.
yes, we'll say good night.
Okay.
And
Either
coming
way.
back for the next Guitar Night Live is going to be in 2 weeks' time. This time we've got a Swedish guitarist called Gottfried Waxen Norberg, or Norberg Waxen. Can't remember which way around it goes. He's an incredible shred player. He's like the fastest guitar player that I've ever seen in my life. He play over 2,000 notes a minute, well over. It's this incredible technique, absolute and virtuosic speed metal player. So we're going to all the extremes. We're going everywhere. So come to that